Welcome to the CBC Sports Digital Studio. I'm Brittany McLean Campbell, and it is time to talk PWHL because it has been in the headlines every day this week between the expansion news and the Walter Cup finals about to begin. We're going to break it all down, and we're lucky today to be joined by CBC Sports writer and PWHL insider Karissa Donkin, who has just arrived in Montreal. Karissa, it is so good to see you. I know you just got off the flight, so it's been, you haven't had a ton of time, but I did want to know, what are the vibes like in Montreal?
Yeah, great to see you too, Britt. I mean, you know what? As soon as I went into the airport, I did see a big Go Victoire sign. Lots of people wearing Habs gear as well. So there's definitely a hockey fever here in Montreal. And when you go to the rink, Place Bell is one of my favorite arenas, I think, to watch a game in because it's so loud in there. They've got a DJ, the music is bumping, the fans are super into it. So I think it's going to be a really great atmosphere here today too. And also because they're playing the Charge from, just down the highway, there are probably going to be some Ottawa fans. I expect to hear some kazoos as well.
Well, we are lucky and fortunate as hockey fans in general in this country because this is going to be the first ever all-Canadian matchup. So as you mentioned it, we have the Ottawa Charge, the Montreal Victoire. Let's set the scene a little bit. How do you feel about these two teams going into the first game of the Walter Cup final tonight?
Well, you've got two teams that really have something to prove here, Britt. I mean, we look at Ottawa. Ottawa made it all the way to the Walter Cup final last year. And I think a lot of people, me included, we weren't really sure what to expect from Ottawa this season. A lot of their top scorers left, last season. And so we weren't really sure who was going to score in Ottawa. And you look at somebody like Jocelyn Larocque, you look at somebody like Brianne Jenner. Those are players who kind of put this team on their backs. They're veteran players. They're hungry for a championship. And then you look at Montreal. That's a team that, went out in the first round 2 seasons in a row, and they feel like they're built to win it this year. But I think also what makes it special, Brittany, we were just talking about the fans. I think they're two of the best fan bases in the league. The Charge fans, they've always got the kazoos going. I mentioned that earlier. It's always loud inside TD Place. And then the Montreal fans are quite rabid as well. So I think there's just a lot of excitement around it. But definitely from a hockey perspective, I expect this is going to be fast. It's going to be physical. And I think we're going to see a lot of kind of like rush style chances. It's going to be fun.
I love that. And I'd be remiss not to ask about Captain Clutch because we have seen MPP doing MPP things. Of course, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Captain Canada, knows how to score when it matters most, and she gets that goal that puts Montreal ahead to get into this Walter Cup final. She's playing what would appear to be on an injury, not at 100% right now. What are you most impressed by Marie-Philippe Poulin in this run?
Yeah, I mean, we all know there's tons of evidence that she's the most clutch player in the world. You referenced her nickname there. She's not a fan of that. She wouldn't like to call herself that, but she is Captain Clutch, and we saw that in the win over Minnesota. Not only did she score the game-winning goal, she also set up the play that got the puck onto Catherine Dubois' stick for the opening goal off the face-off as well. And, we don't really talk as much, Britt. We talk about the big goals and we talk about her skill, but we don't talk as much about her defensive impact. So, as you mentioned, she is dealing with an injury. We've seen her look to be in a great deal of pain on the bench at times, but she's out there blocking shots. When the game is on the line, they're protecting a 1-goal lead. She is a player who's out there who, the coach can rely on. I don't know if Corey Chevry, loves to see Poulin block a shot. Maybe that's not something you want to see your star player do, but that's something that's just in her DNA. So I think it's incredible to watch. And I asked Anne-Renee Desbiens yesterday, just personally, what would it feel like to see your captain lift the Walter Cup? And she said it just gave her goosebumps even thinking about it. She said, she's the one and only Captain Clutch. She's not just the best player in the world, but the best human as well. And nothing would make her happier than to see her captain win one of these. I think it's pretty much the only thing she hasn't won, Britt.
It is. And you know what? Because I know her personally, I truly can say that one of the greatest humans I've ever met, just like the exact leader you would want on a team. So I am looking forward to this. Before we move on into more of the expansion news, just maybe a final tagline from you about this setup. Why should fans tune in? What's most exciting to you about this matchup that we're about to start?
Yeah, I mean, just two great teams, right? I mean, Ottawa is fun to watch, especially if you like that kind of physical brand of hockey. They have a lot of rush chances, and then you look at Montreal, a team that's a lot deeper than the Montreal teams we've seen in the past. I mean, you have to remember this is a team that rattled off a 16 point streak, 16 game point streak. Let me get that right there. And that was without Poulin for a lot of that. It was without Aaron Ambrose for stretches of that. So that would have made this team fold in the past, but not this iteration of the Montreal Victoires. So they believe that they're really built for a championship. And I think for people who've been following women's hockey for a long time, you've got Brienne Jenner, the captain, on one side, and of course Poulin, who we just talked about. Jenner is probably one of the most underrated players in women's hockey over the years, and one of these captains is going to win the cup. So that's kind of exciting to think about.
There really is no wrong answer here, but I think it's going to be fun for you to start things off in Montreal. Of course, between Place Bell and the Bell Center, a lot of energy around hockey right now. The Canadians are making their run as well, so I know Montreal is going to have that little extra energy and pizzazz. I did want to talk to you about expansion because you are a hockey insider. This has been such a topic that just selfishly, I've been getting updates from you as much as possible. I remember sitting in this very chair with athletes that were a part of the inaugural PWHL class when they got drafted, and there were 6 teams. And right now we are sitting at 11 teams. So in the last 2 weeks, there's been news around 3 additional teams. We have Detroit, and then within this last week, we have Hamilton and Las Vegas. So I wondered, maybe we can start with Hamilton, but any idea how that became kind of one of the decisions to expand the market and what made Hamilton one of the choices?
Well, Britt, I think we're going to need a few more hours in the day to watch all this extra PWHL hockey, which is
Yes.
kind of fun. Hamilton, I think really, if you go back to January, they hosted a game on the league's takeover tour. So that's where they go to different markets across North America that where they don't have a team and they have a game. So they had a game between the Toronto Scepters and the Seattle Torrent there, and they drew more than 16,000 fans at the newly renovated TD Coliseum. So the biggest thing for the PWHL is facilities. They want the players to play somewhere professional. They also want them to have professional facilities to train in as well. And, with Hamilton, they don't have an NHL team or an NBA team to try to schedule around. They do have a new AHL team that's debuting there next year. So I think that's a huge part of it, having an ownership group or rather, a company that operates that arena being willing to give the league prime ice time, prime game time. I think that's something that the league wasn't able to get in some of these maybe bigger cities, maybe more. I mean, hockey or Hamilton is a traditional hockey market, but I think if you look at cities that have NHL teams, we were looking at Edmonton, we were looking at Denver, places like that. I think the arena, made more sense. And the other thing, Britt, is when they had that game in January, they saw that 70% of the people who bought tickets were buying a PWHL ticket for the first time. So that gave them some confidence that they're not going to be taking fans away from the Toronto Scepters, even though they are, geographically pretty close to each other. They believe there are some other areas around there, whether it's the Niagara region, whether it's London, Kitchener, Waterloo, where they can draw fans from. And obviously there's a great rivalry just waiting to happen between Toronto and Hamilton.
Well, I love how it's almost brought out like the competitive sports fan in everyone because I saw the announcement and I saw a bunch of people saying like, what about us in the Maritimes? Or where's our Alberta team? How does Ontario get another team? And it is so much about logistics, like you said, but in a sense, I kind of love seeing that because I was like, okay, there's more demand, there's more need, people want it. Break down the Las Vegas decision a bit because I thought that context on Hamilton was really great. So any ideas as to where Las Vegas came from?
Kind of out of nowhere, to be honest with you. They've never played a game in Vegas, and this was a team that sort of gained, or a city, I should say, that gained a bit of strength kind of as this process went on. The PWHL really wants to get to that magic 12 number, and the reason for that is they believe that 12 is a better number than 8 when it comes to building corporate partnerships, when it comes to trying to get this big US broadcast rights deal that the league is still seeking. That's how this league is going to make money. And sometimes it's helpful if you think of it as one entity rather than 11 separate teams, right? So Vegas, they talked about the growing hockey culture there since the Vegas Golden Knights came to town back in 2017. They have seen a lot of growth in women's and girls hockey. It's obviously not at the level that a lot of Canadian markets would be at, and even some American markets that don't have a team. But this is really a bet, no pun intended, on the growth of women's and girls hockey, and also again, it's facilities. They're going to be playing at T-Mobile Arena where the Golden Knights play, and just having an ownership group with the Golden Knights being willing to work with them and give them prime space inside that arena, I think made a difference. But a little bit of geography too here, Britt. I mean, we did hear Seattle and Vancouver had some really difficult travel this year. They do travel commercially. They're not always flying around, by private plane, except occasionally in the playoffs, but mostly they're flying just like you and I would. And so
Back of
there
the
were some
bus.
long trips. Yeah, like there were some long trips for them.
Yeah.
So, this now adds a team in the Southwest. And if the PWHL goes to two conferences next season, which is a possibility, then that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and you've been in so many conversations with players and staff and management. And as much as it feels like this is a lot all at once, I'm assuming there is a little bit of strategy as to why expand so rapidly. I wondered if you can add some context into why we're seeing all of these expansion teams come around the same time.
For sure. And there should be another one coming, Britt. I mean, if people are
I was just going to
counting
say,
at
we
home, we're
can't
up
end
to
at
11.
11.
It's not even, right? I think they are going to go to 12 and sit there for a little bit because obviously it's very disruptive when you expand. But the question I asked Stan Kasten, who's an advisory board member with the PWHL a few weeks ago, is, why do you expand, like announce an expansion team and then go there right away? Like very quickly, because you look at the WNBA, you look at the NWSL, other leagues, they'll announce an expansion market, but they won't actually start playing right away. There'll be some time to kind of build that team. We just saw that with the Toronto Tempo, of course, in the WNBA. And the idea is that, Stan said, we know where we want to get to. Why bother waiting to get there? And, this is a league that's done a lot of stuff on the fly. They started a 6-team league from scratch in about 6 months. So for them to sort of build 4 brand new teams from scratch in just a few months it's not like it's something they haven't done before. And I know it might seem a little bit jarring, but again, Britt, I think it makes more sense if you think of it as one iteration. Of course, all these teams are owned by the same structure, and they're building the league as a whole rather than individual markets. Though obviously they want individual markets to be successful. So I think it makes more sense if you think about it like that. And they believe that, if you have 12 markets, that you have a better chance of getting that big TV deal. That's how they're going to make money at this stage of the game. And every market they launch costs them more money. This league is still not making money. They're losing money, right? Because they're in a startup phase. But the idea is, they're building a 12-team structure that, is going to make more money as a whole down the road. That's the idea behind it.
Well, and like this fresh energy with the league in general, like it sounds like there's the combination of a business decisions and then a high performance decision for the athlete, and you kind of have to find that perfect medium. And right now, let's be honest, it's not perfect yet, but the goal is that it will become. And so, one of the questions I did want to ask your opinion on, just in general, and you see a lot of the back and forth conversations. I don't want to say it's a debate because I think it's all really generally positive, but there are conversations about dilution of the league in general, of when you're doubling the league in size, how do we keep the quality where it is? And so my question just to you is, where are we going to see these players come from to fill these 3, potentially 4 new teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Britt. Math has never been my strong suit, but that's like 90 new players you have to go and find and add to the league. And there's definitely, like, if you look at the ecosystem right now for women's hockey, this is it in North America, right? You've got the Swedish Women's Hockey League, which is probably the next tier. If you don't make the PWHL, that's the best place, you can go play right now. It's obviously very far away. And if people don't want to leave North America for all kinds of reasons, then that's sort of it, right? There's no American Hockey League equivalent for the PWHL right now, and that's not really on the horizon right now for the PWHL to start a whole minor league as well. So I think part of it is development, like using these extra 4 teams as development. There's no doubt. I think that there may be sort of a bit of a difference in the products that we see next year with adding 4 teams, but we also have a really strong draft class coming. So there are a number of players from Europe coming over, and we can also talk about Caroline Harvey, who's likely to go first overall, Layla Edwards, a ton of Team USA stars who just won an Olympic gold medal, Tessa Janicki, Abby Murphy. She's someone who everybody's going to be talking about as that kind of agitator player, but also with a ton of skill. You see players like Laura Fortino and Megan Augusta, who've been on the Canadian national team and have won before, and now, coming out of sort of retirement in the case of Megan Augusta and looking to get back into the league. So they're definitely going to find the talent, but I also think it's going to take a bit of time for it to grow because there's no minor league right now. So I think The more these players who maybe aren't even necessarily ready to play in the league yet, the more they can kind of get the pro experience, the better they're going to get. So not sure what it'll look like next year, but it'll be interesting to see what the level of play looks like maybe 2-3 years down the road.
Well, and I think it's such an important reminder too, because the athlete inside of me immediately thinks about like the potential for maybe there is someone that, got through the university years and never fully reached a maximal potential, but because there's a league and there's an establishment and the ability to play regular games, like even our top national teamers were playing a couple tournaments a year and now they're playing multiple times a week. Like this is just the start of something, and what I truly believe, I know you believe as well, of something that's going to be really special and hopefully really sustainable one day. But we're in that like growing process. I'm excited for these teams to start settling, and then I'm going to finally buy the name on the back of my jersey, because I always say, I'm like, I don't even know who to put right now because everything's going to reshuffle. But obviously
That's
no
a fair
cheering.
point.
No cheering in the press box. With that, though, I was going to say have so much fun at the game tonight. I know you can't cheer for one specific team because you are a great member of the media, but I will say if it's a great goal or a great play, you can give a nice little clap. But I can't wait to hear about the energy in the stadium. So please report back. If you want to follow along with a lot of Karissa's content, she's going to be writing on cbcsports.ca. We're going to be sharing some updates on our social media as well. First game puck drops tonight, just a few hours at Centre Bell. Thank you so much for your time, Karissa.
Thank you. I just hope both teams have fun. I'll be having fun. I know that.
Yes.
Thanks,
we'll
Britt. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, as you.